And that was just a little sample of a recurring guest here on Dave White Presents. Of course, the legendary James Bond guitarist Vic Flick. And it's kind of appropriate that we use old Vic once again to lead into this interview because we have another returning guest. Now, back in October 27th, 2010, Raymond Benson first joined us here on Dave White Presents. And on that show, we talked about his James Bond novels because his new collection, anthology, Choice of Weapons, had just come out. So if you go to our past programs archives, you can hear that very long discussion about the Bond books. Well, it's a year later, and we're not going to talk much about James Bond today, but rather Raymond Benson's brand new book, which is called The Black Stiletto, which is a whole different story indeed. So let's find out more about it and perhaps a few other things by bringing on another old friend at Dave White Presents, Raymond Benson. Hello, Raymond. Welcome back to the show.
Well, how you doing, Dr. Britton?
Yeah, it's good to have you. Well, one thing we didn't talk about in our last conversation, although we could have, is a series of books that I hadn't read, so that's why I was pretty ignorant. What's the story behind the rock and roll thrillers?
Back in 2008 and 9, I published two novels through Dorchester, featuring a rock and roll detective, basically. His name is Spike Behringer, and the first one's called A Hard Day's Death, and the second one's called Dark Side of the Morgue. He works in the world of rock and roll, and I've of course skewed that world to be a very dangerous place. And so, he's got to investigate murders and kidnappings and blackmailings and things like that. And it's all done tongue-in-cheek. There's a lot of humor in it, but there's a lot of music references, and rock stars make cameo appearances, and they're just a lot of fun. And there's also a short story, On the Threshold of a Death. And these are now all available in a collection as an ebook on Amazon and other formats. And it's called The Rock and Roll Detective's Greatest Hits.
All right, what were we going to talk about? Oh, we were going to talk about The Black Stiletto, which is a whole different kettle of fish from James Bond and all that. I'll let you describe the book, Raymond. Who is The Black Stiletto?
Well, The Black Stiletto is a mythical, legendary person who was active in the late 1950s and early 1960s. She was a costumed vigilante. She kind of has the mystique of, say, like a Betty Page, in that she was real famous there for a little while in the Eisenhower and early Kennedy years, and then disappeared. And since that time, her cult status has grown, and people have the media has exploited her image and legend in comic books and a movie and action figures and things like that, but nobody knows what happened to her. Well, we start in the present, and a 48-year-old man named Martin Talbot is taking care of his mother, who has Alzheimer's, and she's in a nursing home, and they live in the suburbs of Chicago. And he discovers that she had some secrets. And he really finally, he learns that she is the Black Stiletto, or she was back in the 50s. She's in her 70s now. And he discovers a series of diaries that become the Black Stiletto story. So it's a dual story. You get Martin, the son's story in the present, and it's parallel with his mother's story in the past.
Well, actually, it's kind of a triple track because you've also got, I'm trying to avoid giving away any spoilers, but there's also the account of a guy that she put away way back in the day.
Right. There's a third voice. We'll just leave it at that. There will always, this is going to be a 5-book series, and there will always be a third voice besides Martin and the Black Stilettos, and it will be different in each book, that third voice. The second book is already scheduled for publication in May of 2012, actually. But Library Journal just favorably compared. I always had a bit of a hard time describing what this book is because it's really a genre mix-up. But Library Journal put it into pretty succinctly in their review, and they favorably said it was a mashup of the work of Gloria Steinem, Ian Fleming, and Mario Puzo, all under the editorship of Stan Lee.
Yeah, I read that. I thought that is an interesting way to put it, because that does kind of sum things up. How did you decide to take on this kind of project? Because mass vigilantes doesn't immediately jump out as the sort of thing a 007 writer might take on.
Well, I was talking to my manager, my agent, literary manager, one day, and he was telling me how most of the purchasers of books these days are women, and I should come up with something that would definitely appeal to women. So actually, a lot of my original novels, original thrillers, did feature and do feature female protagonists. But I wanted to create one that could perhaps, hopefully, become sort of an icon, and conceive of it as a series. The time period specifically interested me. I'm a big fan of the TV show Mad Men, and I thought, let's set something in that sort of Eisenhower-Kennedy time period, and because that would be a lot of fun. And I just really enjoyed exploring her, the character of the Black Stiletto, the woman Judy Talbot. She was known as Judy Cooper back when she was young. I created a whole backstory for her and write in her words. And it was also a challenge to try to capture the way a young woman writes in her diary, which is how it's presented in the book. So I, after I wrote the book, I gave it to several women friends and writers, fellow writers, and they all, gave their seal of approval that if they hadn't known a man had written it, that then they would have thought a woman had. So there you go.
One thing that struck me about the book is that it's a very believable story. This isn't a vigilante like Batman who's out there hitting up costumed Jokers and Riddlers and all of that sort of thing. She's more kind of a Green Hornet sort of character where she's dealing with gangsters and street thugs and things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. She has no real superpowers, and I wanted a very realistic approach. What would it really be like if a woman decided to do this? And she's not going to fight any arch villains or anything like that. It's really just the common crooks and communist spies and your ordinary jewel thieves and things like that. But it's more than that. It's also a family story. It's a story about a mother and her son, and it's a story about feminism, really. I think the Black Stiletto is a feminist even before that term was in the vernacular.
Oh, to put it mildly, yeah. Yeah, one thing I liked about it in the realism was that she could be going out on the hunt for days and weeks and not have anybody to battle, unlike a usual comic book hero where they're every night of the week they're going to find somebody. But she comes home disappointed quite a lot, doesn't she?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But then she's got other relationships in her normal life, which I've taken great pains to make interesting. She has she falls in love, and she has best friends, and she works in an all-male gym. So there's a lot of things that'll keep folks entertained, I think.
Oh, I think so. I really enjoyed it. The one thing I kind of thought was interesting was I went to your website, and you've got various ways of promoting a book. You got a free e-story for folks so they can get their appetites whetted. But it seems like almost everybody these days has got to create a video to promote a book in. You came up with one of those too, didn't you?
I did, and I if I do say so myself, it's pretty elaborate. I wrote and produced it in Hollywood, and a good friend of mine is a filmmaker, and he shot and edited it with me sort of being an armchair director behind him. And that's available to be seen on the website, theblackstiletto.net. And as you say, there is a teaser short story that's free that you can download from the same site.
Well, tell you what, folks, we can't show you the pictures, but why don't we take a pause here and let's hear that video trailer to set you up for what the Black Stiletto is all about. And Roll it, Dave.
Hello everyone, I'm Sandy Lee for World Entertainment Television. Tonight, our program is putting up an extraordinary reward to anyone who might know the whereabouts of the woman once known as the Black Stiletto. Tonight's story looks at the phenomenon of this remarkable woman. You would have to have lived on the moon for the last 50 years not to have heard of the Black Stiletto. Although the costumed vigilante was active only for a few years in the late 1950s and early 1960s, her image and legend have been duly exploited by the media ever since. There have been Black Stiletto comic books, a Hollywood film, and a Black Stiletto action figure. The Black Stiletto tackled common crooks, the Mafia, and communist spies, often resulting in the capture and arrest of these criminals. But in fact, she was also wanted by the police and the FBI for taking the law into her own hands. What do we know about her? Well, not much. Her identity has remained a mystery since her crime-fighting days. She was active first in New York City and then in Los Angeles between 1958 and 1963. After that, she vanished. These candid photographs taken at a New York bar by a lucky newspaper man could be the only pictures of the woman that exist. Legend has it that she simply walked into the place in costume and voluntarily posed for the pictures. This footage allegedly shows the Black Stiletto in New York shot by an enterprising pedestrian with an 8mm camera sometime in the late 50s. Unfortunately, very little authentic photographs and film footage of the crime fighter exist. So where is the Black Stiletto now? Is she dead? Is she in hiding? It was suspected that she was in her 20s when she was active. So if she's still alive, then she would be in her 70s or 80s today. World Entertainment Television would like to offer a $10,000 reward to anyone who has information on the Black Stiletto's identity and what happened to her. The Black Stiletto was and still is an international phenomenon. Whether or not she continues to remain a mystery to us all, no one can say.
And that was a little bit of a teaser for a book coming September the 5th. And who's the publisher, and where can folks find it, Raymond?
Ocean View Publishing. They're a great up-and-comer publisher, and people can find it everywhere. It's on Amazon. It's hopefully in your Barnes & Noble bookstore. It's on the oceanviewpub.com website. It's on my website, raymondbenson.com. It's on theblackstiletto.net.com. It's probably on barnesandnoble.com. Wherever you want to find a book, it's probably there.
And don't forget, folks, that you could always go to the Dave White Presents webpage if you're not already there. Hop on down to the Persons of Interest page, and you'll find Raymond Benson there, and you can find a link to the Black Stiletto and learn more about this fascinating new character that's coming to a bookstore near you, I guess. Any ideas about a film or graphic novel version or anything like that?
Well, we would love to have both.
Of course.
So, we're shopping it around right now.
Well, I hate to ask if you've got any other works in the pipeline because it sounds like your plate's pretty full. But do you have any other books that you're working on besides Black Stiletto sequels?
Well, as I said, Black Stiletto 2 comes out in May, and I'm actually working right now on number 3. Recently, just in February, actually, I co-wrote a novelization of a popular video game called Homefront. I co-wrote it with John Milius, the screenwriter and director. He co-wrote Apocalypse Now and directed and wrote Red Dawn and Conan the Barbarian. He created the universe of the video game, and we've written an original speculative novel. It's about it takes place 15 years in the future, and it's about a war with North Korea here on our home turf. So that's out, and I guess there's a possibility of a sequel to that. We're not sure yet, but we shall see.
We shall see indeed. Well, folks, I have a suspicion this is not the last time that we'll be talking to Raymond Benson here on Dave White Presents. So I guess we'll just wrap things up and say thanks, Raymond, for coming back to appear on our little old Dave White Presents.